Like, I'm just like, oh my God, time and place. And you did it at my birthday dinner.
Hi, sisters!
James Charles is a predator. James Charles took advantage of his fans. James Charles took advantage of his power position.
I fear that we've forgotten that James Charles is actually a creep. The man literally admitted to messaging multiple minors and then in the same breath, victim blamed them. Hi everybody, my name is Justin Jordan, and today we're going to be undertaking the arduous task of basically going through all of the allegations which have been inflicting James Charles, because I feel like this is something that's not talked about enough, especially as it pertains to James. He's successfully managed to wash his image so that nobody knows exactly what happened. Like, people might know that there was a controversy, but they don't necessarily know like the details of said controversy. I'm going to try to be as in-depth as I can with these allegations. It's just something that's super important to talk about, especially when this person is still massive and has a giant platform and lots of people follow him and interact with every single post. While he has posted 2 videos addressing the situation, one of them was deleted, and the second one is kind of him, while saying some of the right things, not necessarily taking, the level of accountability that I think would be appropriate in the situation. And also in modern day, it just seems like he, in my opinion, is not willing to just take accountability at all as it pertains to the situation. So yes, we're going to be getting to everything. Before we dive into everything, I just want to emphasize, for legal reasons, all this information is information that was found online, is publicly available. Because there has been no charges filed in the situation, I do have to state that all of this is alleged, all of this is information found, and that I guess all statements made by me as it pertains to James Charles being a creep are my opinion, but I do think that my opinion is, behind facts, but again, I have to say that it's my opinion. So just to go back to the beginning, James Charles has been on the internet in some way, shape, or form for a very, very long time. The oldest video that I could find on his old channel that he made as like a child was posted in 2010. So this man has been on the internet for over a decade at this point. On that original channel, he posted things that were more Mario Kart themed. It was more of like a gaming channel, typical for what you would see like back then, kids just getting on their webcams, hopping on YouTube and just recording whatever came to mind. So something that I think is very important to note about this era is that James would later discuss in a story time that he discovered Omegle at a young age and had used the site to interact with grown men and was caught at 12 by his dad doing things with these men online.
I may or may not have been caught when I was younger doing my business. 6th grade, I was 12 years old at the time. I was hormonal. I quickly realized that although a lot of people on Tumblr were using the site to meet their fans and meet new friends, that a lot of people were using Omegle for different purposes. And through realizing this, I also started using Omegle for different purposes, if you get what I'm putting on the table here. The visits to Omegle became more and more frequent until they were literally a daily occurrence.
So I think there's a lot to be said here as it pertains to what potential impact this could have on James. I want to emphasize that I'm not a therapist. I'm not qualified, I guess. I don't want to sit here and act like I'm the authority on these things, but just from a practical standpoint, there's no doubt that being exposed to this type of stuff at such a young age definitely can change you. And it's not, I don't think it's something that's positive at all. So if you don't know, Omegle, although it's now deleted, is very infamous for kind of the amount of grown men that would get on camera and just show their stuff to anybody who was scrolling. And this website was very popular, 2010s. It's been a breeding ground for a lot of people who have nefarious and sick motives to just get their rocks off there and be in the presence of children, because a lot of children like to frequent the site because of the fun concept. And of course, there's nothing inherently wrong with the concept of the site. It's just, I'm meeting strangers online. But the strangers online and the grown people online who want to be on that type of website are probably not exactly the type of people that you want to be interacting with. And any place where there's grown people interacting with children, who are not their parents or who don't know these children, and the people who will seek out those spaces, it's very fishy, and I think there needs to be some sort of regulation or some sort of like, observer status to make sure that there's safety, and because it's the internet, that's not really possible. So yeah, lots of bad behavior there. I do want to emphasize that in this case, like back then, James Charles was definitely the victim in the situation. There's no way he could have consented to this stuff. Even if he thought that's what he wanted, he was not fully mentally developed. He was not fully mentally there, whereas these grown men were, and were actively using him for their pleasure, which is disgusting. I do want to emphasize that I don't think that this situation excuses James' later behavior, but I do think that it could help in possibly explaining some of the why and some of the development of how he feels about, his interactions with people. This is not saying that everybody who is a victim of something is going to go on and, do that same thing to somebody else in the future. That is not true. That is not proven at all. So many victims become advocates against this type of stuff. So many victims live normal lives. The fact that you were a victim of something does not mean that you were necessarily cursed to perpetrate that. But regardless, James really blew up popularity-wise mid-2010s, 2015, 2016 type of YouTuber beauty era, full glam. And apparently he started learning how to do makeup later in his teenage years. So one of the big things to really push him out into the status that he's at today, he redid his high school senior pics, full glam. It's very 2016 coded because he has the man bun, he has the full glam. It's very time capsule-y. It's very interesting to see the development of beauty trends, because now it's just so minimalistic, so clean girl. And back then it was just gaudy, I want people to know that I'm wearing makeup and that I can do it. James would continue to explode in popularity, being known for his funny persona and eye-catching makeup looks. He would also become friends with some of the makeup elite of the time, doing several collabs with people like Jeffree Star, I know, and getting very close with people like Tati, who is considered somewhat of his internet mom. She would kind of, guide him through the trials and tribulations of being on the internet, being a public figure, what that means for him, and how he should go about it. And he continued to skyrocket into popularity, doing things like the Sister Squad, being just every video was doing it well, and he kind of just jettisoned into this level of fame that, yes, it had been seen before, but again, especially in the beauty community, a lot of the older, more established, more popular creators, or more considered elite, had really been doing this type of stuff for years and years and years. Jeffree Star had been on the internet since MySpace, 2007, and James is just coming out, swinging out the gate with a level of success that is somewhat comparable to what Jeffree was able to do over decades of internet presence. And Jeffree, we'll get into him later, he is just a very shady figure in my opinion, and he just kind of latches on to these newer creators, and then it gives jealousy when they start doing well, and just kind of sinks his claws into them. There were minuscule controversies somewhat, but the major one would come in 2019 because everything was going well. James was really blowing up, until 2019 when Dramageddon. To not take too much of your time for the sake of getting to his more modern allegations, Dramageddon was really set off when James Charles took a sponsorship with a supplement brand known as Sugar Bear Hair, which was a competitor to Tati's brand, to get VIP access at Coachella. So basically, James went to Coachella, and for some reason, he didn't buy the VIP thing. So of course, fans and the thousands of people who attend the festival are gonna be oh my God, that's James Charles. At the time, he's one of the biggest and newest, hottest YouTuber names out there. So everybody's crowding around him. We'll get into this later, but he was also with a guy at the Coachella event, and there was just some controversy about that. But this set off Tati Westbrook, James's friend, and I described earlier, kind of his motherly figure on the internet who kind of guided him. So Tati, in a video named Bye Sister, slammed James, accusing him of several inappropriate behaviors and also trying to seduce straight men. And Tati was then backed up by people like Jeffree Star. Jeffree posted a tweet oh yeah, James was really creepy around my boyfriend, and I believe Jeffree at the time was dating Nate, which that's a whole nother can of worms, which is just very interesting. But to cut a long story short, Jeffree had met Nate apparently in a pet store, and I forgot what state it is, but some state in the Midwest, and basically flew him out to LA and like took him and was like, oh yeah, you're my boyfriend now. Oh, I could do a whole deep dive on Jeffree, but regardless, he did it at my birthday dinner, was one of the big things that come out of this. And this was massive. Millions of people tuned in. People were like, oh, James, you're over. James is canceled. James is over party. James had absolutely started to bleed followers until his second response video, No More Lies. He'd released a first one, but people thought it was so robotic and like scripted. But he releases a second video, No More Lies, rebuffing the allegations from Tati. And after the internet was like, oh, James actually came swinging with like screenshots, proof, he basically like rebuffed Tati's allegations, most of them. You know, of course there's some stuff that he couldn't rebuff, but like, I do think that like it muddied the waters as it pertains to like the future of James, because a lot of people were like, well, you know, people accused James of being inappropriate before and it wasn't true and he rebuffed it. But it's like in this new situation, which we're going to talk about later, it wasn't necessarily the same accusations and it wasn't the same merits. It swings back on Tati. Now she's the one losing subscribers. She's the one being canceled basically for people being like, so you basically just lied. She started to claim that Shane Dawson and Jeffree Star had like somehow devised this plan and made her make the original video against James, which that's a whole can of worms, and I think it's really interesting. It's still debated today whether that's like actually true. I don't know about Shane, but given what Jeffree has done, I wouldn't be totally averse to the idea of that being true. James walked out of that scandal so emboldened, so powerful, and you know, he might not have gained back all the subscribers that he had prior, but he was still pretty popular, he was still pretty well known, and now he had just rebuffed something that a lot of people thought was just going to end his career. Despite some major allegations being rebuffed, there's no doubt that, in my opinion, James really seems to have this obsession, and like, this is kind of just my speculation and my opinion, but he has this affinity towards straight adjacent people. Like, for example, Gage at Coachella in 2019, this guy he invited to Coachella with him, and Gage was like, I'm not really interested in exploring, and James apparently got really upset about that. So, but yeah, I could honestly make a whole video covering the obsession and the kind of infatuation with straight adjacent men and DL culture. And I want to make sure to say this, but this call is coming from inside the house. If you couldn't tell, like, I am part of the community, so it's not like some outsider, whatever, trying to come in and preach, but like to see the kind of discourse about like gay relationships and crushes and dating exposed to the wider internet was definitely an interesting development in this whole situation. Regardless, James continued to enjoy success on YouTube after rebuffing these allegations. 2020 would be a good year for him. He was making collaborations with celebrities like Lil Nas X and TikTokers like Charli D'Amelio. I believe there was a point where he was like heavily ingrained and involved with kind of like the Hype House. If you don't know what that is, it was like a house of TikTokers, and they kind of dominated the TikTok kind of cultural sphere. Very popular group of like influencers in the very early 2020s. But that success and newfound confidence after rebuffing the prior allegations would be shattered in 2021 when allegations of messaging minors came against James, and this time there were screenshots. A lot of the accusers ended up deleting their tweets. So if they don't want this to be seen, I'm of course going to talk about the accusation, but I'm not necessarily going to blow up their videos or their statements if they didn't want to, you know, have that up there. But I'm going to try my best to document the allegations. So in 2021, James Charles would be accused by a 16-year-old of and flirting with them. So James responded on Twitter to the allegations, basically saying that the victim had lied about his age and claimed to be 18. And in his statement, James goes so far to claim that the victim had ulterior motives. James ends his statement by saying he would now be asking for IDs and passports of the guys he talked to in the future. And I just think it's just so insane to dodge accountability like this bluntly. James was the adult in this situation, and yet here, he seems to try to blame the child for basically saying that the child set him up. And this becomes a pattern to the point where people started to question whether everybody making these allegations against James were lying about their ages. And I did just want to talk about this. I want to preface this by saying, like, Def Noodles is now a very controversial figure. Then he was more of a drama commentary YouTuber. He released a mega thread documenting all of those coming out against James. And just to be journalistic, James later says that like a lot of these ones documented by Def Noodles didn't necessarily have merit. He was upset by like the fact that there were so many, and while James would apologize to like several people, I think he is really against this idea that there are so many victims. And I tried really hard to find the original tweet, but Def Noodles had deleted basically everything regarding the situation and regarding his past. So here's a repost from the H3 subreddit. Just for context, at the time, H3 and Trisha Paytas were still doing the Frenemies podcast. And at the time, James Charles was a big subject on the podcast because these allegations were coming out against James. And they were just kind of shocked that people were still working with him. It's just very interesting to see kind of how, like, I don't know, Frenemies ended, and also how like Trisha and H3 are in such different like situations now. Here's what they claim on the H3 subreddit. Summary. 16-year-old boy from March 31st, 2021. There was a second 16-year-old boy listed on March 30th, a third 16-year-old boy, a fourth 16-year-old boy, 17-year-old boy, 14-year-old boy. There's allegations of catfishing the soccer team when younger, more allegations of catfishing the soccer team while younger, a fan of unknown age alleging that James Charles pressured them to send pics, a different fan of an unknown age alleging that James Charles requested pics from them, an 18-year-old alleging that James Charles harassed them for a fan of unknown age alleging that James Charles slipped into their DMs, outside sources alleging James Charles groomed them on TikTok for months before being seen in bed with him 9 days, another fan of unknown age. There were people going back to the Sister Squad, which was James Charles, Emma Chamberlain, and the Dolan brothers, or the Dolan twins. The Dolan twins? James Charles, Emma Chamberlain, who said she was uncomfortable in another situation of James Charles being creepy towards her. James Charles joking about how he catfished straight men, 17-year-old boy at the time, and an 18-year-old singer claiming that James Charles tried to get with him when he was 17. So in all, 14 boys alleging predatory behavior from James Charles, and 8 being underage at the time that the interaction occurred. Now, of course, I want to emphasize again that these are allegations. All this is alleged. To be fair, Def Noodles isn't exactly known for his journalistic integrity. These allegations, a lot of them were not necessarily listed in like more of the news articles that I found, but there was a Variety article that I found that I assume is more vetted and had more like direct proof. So here's who they listed. They listed a first 16-year-old, a 17-year-old, a man of unclear age, and a 15-year-old who came out against James Charles. And before people start yapping about clout chasers, yada, 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 I'd rather believe a liar than a potential PDF file. So it's so hard to come out. So the fact that these people are brave enough to come out, despite the fact that, especially in a scenario when James Charles is this person with millions of fans and millions of followers who, not all of them, but some of them are going to blindly believe everything that he says, are going to just parrot his talking points. It's just a very scary situation. There are like a lot of screenshots and text that arise out of the situation. Like, there's one which I think is really interesting. So here's someone posting a screenshot of like a text from James. It's a really lucrative role. It's called My Boyfriend. Requirements 6'2". Must love escape rooms, horror movies, and cuddling. Big armpit hair and an occasional FaceTime call. The salary is $0, but it's a good job offer, I think. Perks include a cute boyfriend with a great personality and a huge free living in a $10 million house in LA, fun travel opportunities, and more. I don't think this person was necessarily a minor. It just kind of shows to me that James doesn't seem to be, in my opinion, averse to using his money and wealth as a draw factor to getting people to romantically interact with them, mentioning that he had a $10 million house in LA and that, oh, you'd get to live with me for free. So I also found a subreddit post of screenshots that were allegedly sent by James to fans. I'm not going to be able to show all of them because it does get very inappropriate, but you can see pictures. This is like, in my opinion, clearly James, and back then, this was before deepfakes, asking things like, do you have a nice body? Do you shave your body? It would literally take you 30 seconds to send a pic like this, haha, come pick me up for some good. And there's even pictures where he is showing his butt to these people. And the Reddit post, again, I want to emphasize, is not like 100% vetted. So allegedly these photos were sent to 16-year-olds. So even if they were lying about their ages, it seems like there was a sustained conversation here. And the irresponsibility of like sending pictures of your naked body to people who you don't necessarily know the ages of, like these random people. And like people were saying that he could have easily checked their pages, and he even says this at a point, like he could have easily looked at their pages and figured out that they were not the ages that they were saying they were. Just because that someone says their age, it doesn't necessarily excuse the fact that you were the adult in this situation. Like, even if these people in the world were, oh, these people are trying to lure you and trying to trap you or whatever, which is, I don't think is true, you have the responsibility as the adult in this situation to do your due diligence, do your due research, and not interact with these people, especially when you're a public figure. There's a certain level of power imbalance there as well, with these people just being teenagers who might have a somewhat small or medium-sized following, and you're this massive, 10 million subscriber, a million views every video YouTuber who's interacted with the famous people and celebrities. As we get into more of James's like modern behavior and more of his modern rebrand, I just have to say again how disgusting it is that I feel like a lot of this stuff is just swept under the rug as like, oh, this was just internet drama. But it's like, okay, when we have screenshots of you sending this stuff to people, and people are saying this was sent to 16-year-olds, it's really disgusting and really disturbing. No matter what you said in this situation, I would have not sat here and been like, oh, yeah, let's forgive James. But regardless, in the wake of these allegations getting more and more traction, James getting more and more called out for this behavior, he decided to make one response, which is now deleted, entitled, "Holding Myself Accountable." So basically in this video, he apologizes to multiple minors for messaging them and, in my opinion, admits to doing this stuff. So James immediately compares the ongoing allegations to those from Bi's sister in the beginning, possibly in some far-fetched attempts to devalue said allegations, even though he apologizes in the video. Comparing to the Bi sister immediately sets in the mind of a watcher that these are not true. James then apologizes to those he said he's hurt by his actions. James says that he fully understands his actions and how they are wrong. Despite saying that he was not making excuses in this video, he tries to explain away his actions again by saying that they both told him that they were 18 and that he thought they were clout chasing at first. These conversations should have never happened. James, you're right, they never should have. Quote, "As an adult, my job is to verify who I'm talking to." And then James, towards the end of this video, he starts claiming that he was desperate. And he also tries to explain away the idea that people are starting to get concerned that it seems like he's seeking out younger people, and he claims that he wasn't. So like overall this video, it's like James knows all the right things to say, but he doesn't seem to apply them, and I'm also weirded out by the fact that he decided to delete this. He posts a second video entitled "An Open Conversation" after he had taken a break to work on himself. So immediately he claims that he had taken a break to work on himself and, taken this time out of the spotlight. And this video also was a makeup tutorial and get ready with me. So James was sitting here talking about allegations of messaging minors while doing his makeup, getting his face, like that is just so inappropriate. That's just not. He again says that as the adult that it was his due diligence to kind of make sure that he wasn't talking to minors, but he also calls this a wake-up call and claims that he's going to change and stop engaging this behavior. At a point in the video, he says that this isn't something that he can just move on from, that he's upset that this stuff will follow him for like the rest of his career, which I think is just really interesting given the modern day and kind of we'll get into it later, but literally an article came out saying James Charles would like to be uncanceled, please. So it's like, which one is it? Is this going to follow you for the rest of your life, or are you like done addressing it and I'm just tired of talking about this stuff? James also addresses Deaf Noodles and the thread about the victims of James Charles. He says that he's not comfortable with people thinking that there are any victims of James Charles. And while we can argue semantics all day and night about whether these people were victims or not, there is no doubt in my mind that if you admit and apologize to these people for your behavior in this situation, then you cannot sit here and quibble at the idea that there are victims of you. It kind of just devalues you sitting here and claiming that you're taking accountability to me. If you're sitting here apologizing, why are you quibbling over that word? But yeah, James is really just a rambler, and I cannot with him consistently yapping about nothing. The same facts that have been discussed in the first video, while still somewhat defending his actions and trying to explain away what happened. There is a semi-accountability while also trying to defend his actions. It seems like James has moved on totally from taking even just semi-accountability to literally taking no accountability at all. James Charles would like to be uncanceled, please. After coming back, James Charles seems to now decided that he totally wanted to avoid accountability. There's an article on Cosmo, and while they changed the official title of it, but in big bold letters on the first page, you can see James Charles would like to be uncanceled, please. Yeah, so there's an article trying to detail James's life and, but it just reads as very biased. I think there's a lot of due diligence that could have been done for this article to see that there were actually allegations out there that had, in my opinion, credibility, and there were screenshots out there. This article just seems to be a puff piece, in my opinion. Like, okay, babe, this is not your fault. No, you're not a PDF file. No, you're not a rumor. You're not a predator, but you made a big mistake. This quote is so insane, and the minimizing language here from who I assume is James is really just concerning. Equating messaging minors and sending them photos to a mistake is wild. Quote, when I polled friends and colleagues about Charles in the run-up to this day, the general consensus was that he had done something bad, but no one was clear on exactly what. If your colleagues are, journalists in the entertainment field, I think it's just very concerning the fact that this is being spun as like, nobody knows what James actually did. Like, there's no evidence or whatever. If you look up James Charles allegations, there's literally screenshots, there's literally videos of people saying that James Charles had messaged them and stuff. Like, this is not some sort of like secret society type beat. This is something that's on the internet and people talk about. And the article even goes so far as to question the validity of the allegations, in my opinion, stating, quote, in the absence of hard evidence, hordes of commenters and bystanders glommed into the idea that James Charles was creepy, irresponsible at best, and possibly predatory at worst. While we can argue back and forth about hard evidence, what evidence could possibly 100% prove everything, especially now in the era of AI? This argument could literally be used in any sort of criminal case, any sort of allegations, and no one would ever be believed ever. Like, what are you referring to as it pertains to hard evidence? Because we have screenshots of James Charles messaging, like, these people. We have these people making statements. We have people coming out and, like what else do you want from these people? Do you want them to bring you the metadata of James Charles messaging them? It's just absolutely disgusting, the fact that this article is being, pushed as, the internet culture is just so irresponsible. We're just canceling people for no reason, when there is a clear reason here why James Charles was facing controversy. I'm not gonna read this whole article verbatim, but this last little section just really, it chilled me a bit. Quote, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody F's up, he says. Don't get me wrong. I definitely don't think people should be able to do whatever they want and not be held responsible for it. It's important to be held accountable, but I think it's important we allow people to grow and learn. The idea that someone F's up in their entire career and everything that they worked for should be swept out from under their feet is just horrifying. And while there's certainly some merit to this statement, like, oh yes, people can change, right? But again, I don't want to compare James Charles to Harvey Weinstein because difference, right? But in that case, Harvey Weinstein's career was destroyed. And he could sit here and say the same thing. Oh, why is someone's career be destroyed for a huge mistake? Like James, he's trying to paint himself as this sort of victim of the cancellation when it's like, I don't know, if these allegations had no merit as well, like the author was saying there was no hard evidence, why would James Charles apologize for them? Why would James Charles apologize for them? Instead of sitting here swinging and, I didn't do anything wrong. Why would he not pull out the evidence? Because he clearly did that with the Bi sister situation. He's clearly did that in Dramageddon. So in this scenario where there was no evidence for this situation, why would James Charles not immediately come to his own defense and have screenshots and have all this evidence that he never did anything wrong? Exactly. It's crickets. But yeah, James Charles is still getting millions of views now. Obviously he's not, I guess, to the level of success that he was at before, but he's doing pretty well for himself. His videos are consistently getting 1 million views, and he's released a palette entitled Painted, which I believe has been pretty successful. And now it seems like he's managed to spin this story on its head, making himself the victim of this massive campaign to catfish and platform off of him, when in reality he was the adult in the situations and continued to interact and engage with these people. And even if there was this sort of campaign against him, which I don't think there was, there are several valid and real situations in which he was responsible for not doing his own due diligence and was responsible for interacting with these people in an inappropriate manner. This has been something talked about, but don't mind me if I'm going to ramble a bit here, but does does it disturb anybody else that James insisted upon using social media apps to find love? Like, Grindr is right there, Tinder is right there, even Raya is right there. You're literally famous. Like, he doesn't seem averse to using his fame and money to attracting people. So, like, why not? I don't know. Like, I feel like there's millions of gays in Hollywood who would love to, like, get with a rich person. And, you know, there is a conversation, like, yes, it is, I guess, it's arguably harder to find love as a gay person. But, like, when you have that money, when you have that fame, when you have that power, I think there is a more likely level that you're able to find somebody. And again, I don't know if it reaches back to this point that James Charles is obsessed with, you know, straight adjacent men, right? I feel like this argument that he can't find anybody, that he's just so desperate that he has to go on social media, that he didn't feel like checking the ages, it's just too convenient of an excuse to me, especially someone in his situation where he's just so rich, so wealthy, so has that access. So yeah, regardless, I hope this video cleared up the allegations against James Charles if you didn't know about them. And I hope now you won't support this man in any way, shape, or form. I think this is something that should get more attention. It's like kind of relegated as old drama, whatever, but like this is something that I think is really disgusting, that I think James, in my opinion, should really not have been able to escape from. And I feel like now he's created this bubble where like people don't really know about it, especially younger fans who might not necessarily have been like super into like internet culture and drama back in 2021 when a lot of these allegations started coming out. But yeah, I just think it's really important that this man never gets away from this stuff. I don't really feel comfortable with the idea that he's able to just somehow escape from this. But yeah, sorry, James Charles, you'll never be uncanceled to me. Thank you so much for watching if you made it this far. I hope this video, I hope it wasn't too heavy. I'm probably going to try to go back to more lighter stuff soon. Regardless, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a great day and just try to enjoy your day. Bye, everybody, and I'll see you next time.